to another mathematics episode. Today we want to discuss some basic measures in statistics, which are the arithmetic mean, median, quantiles, percentages, standard deviation, and variance. I guess you're familiar with most of these measures, but still we want to discuss them today. The mean is, you might know it as the mean value, and it's calculated via this formula. So basically you just add all the values in a data set and then you divide it by the number of values in your data set, and it's a valid measure for a normally distributed variable. Yes, that's I guess quite easy. Let's move on to the median. If you align a data set in one line, then the median is the value in the middle. This is a graphical depiction, and I guess it's easier to understand it like that. So the median is the value that divides a dataset into a lower and a higher halves. And as you can see here, the calculation depends on whether the dataset has an uneven or even number of values. The median is a better measure than the mean when it comes to skewed distributions. And yes, so usually in a statistical analysis you have both the mean and the median. Now, if you have the median, usually there are quantiles as well. The typical ones are the 25 and the 75% quantiles. Here on the right side you can see the same values as before, but now we're calculating the quantiles. There are two different ways: either you include the median or not, and depending on this you get different quantiles, but both are valid ways to calculate it. Now, what does a 25% quantile means? So for example, 7 is the value that is as high or smaller than 25% of all values in the dataset. 21 is as high or smaller than 75% of the whole dataset. And just by the way, usually in data science you do not compute these values by hand, you do computers. There are certain computer programs which do this. Now percentages. I guess percentages is a very basic measure and you encounter it in your everyday life. Just let me say that it's the proportion of 100 of a specific feature. Now standard deviation. This formula looks a bit more complicated, but actually the standard deviation is the value that every value in the dataset is away from its corresponding mean value. So if you've got a mean value of 2 and a standard deviation of 6, this means that your values are not centered around the mean. On the contrary, if you've got a mean of 2 and the standard deviation is 0.1, your values are centered around its mean. In the formula you see the square roots, and they are essential because there are values that are smaller than the mean, and therefore the respective brackets are negative, or the values in the respective brackets. So, and if you now add to these negative values the positive ones, this would diminish the effects. So you take the square root in order to have solely positive values. Now, you might have heard about variance as well. The variance is nothing else as the standard deviation to the power of 2. So this means that the standard deviation has the same unit as the variable, whereas variance has a different one. So if we take meter as an example, if your variable is in meters, then the variance is in square meters. There are applications where you need the variance, and of course you can very easily calculate the standard deviation from it, and the opposite way around. All of these measures are very basic, and I guess you might have encountered a lot of them in school or at university. And of course it's not necessary to calculate them by hand, but it's very important to understand the principle behind it, as they are part of every statistical analysis, because they give you a first impression of the structure of a data set. Maybe you take another look at the examples and the formulas, and then I guess everything will become very clear. I hope you enjoyed this episode and see you in the next one.